advisory board members. So I'm super happy that Samandy is here. She basically keeps us together. When you got 4 dudes running something, you know you need a woman involved in some capacity. So Samandy's a music industry veteran, lifelong creative. Her love for arts, music, and culture is influenced by her Thai and African American heritage. Welcome, Samandy Russell. All right, and next up, an active representative of the Filipino American community in Hampton Roads. Intalek is a creative entrepreneur and hip hop artist. He is immersed in and influenced by the dynamic musical landscape of Virginia and the state's rich musical heritage. Let's hear it for Intalek. And then next up, my guy, Charged Up. Artist, producer, entrepreneur, and community activist. Noah O's music explores his identity as a Filipino American and uses hip-hop to tell stories of resilience, blending his art and his purpose. Noah O. Fresh off a European tour, by the way. And then our special guest and moderator for this panel, very important, even though he's not from Virginia, having conversations and getting to know Joseph over the past few months, the connections that he has to us is the reason why we are glad that he was able to join us to lead this conversation. He's an Indian American Academy Award winner, Peabody Award winner, Grammy, BAFTA. He produced Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised, directed by Ahmir, Questlove, Thompson, and their follow-up film, SLY Lives, aka The Burden of Black Genius. Joseph began his career as a music and culture journalist, later producing and directing television, music videos, and commercials for MTV, Vice Media, Vevo, The Fader, and more. Welcome, Joseph Patel. I'm gonna get out of the way. That's why we got Joseph here. He's a pro, and I'm not a pro. But here we go, Joseph. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy you guys could join me. Before we start, my memory is not what it used to be, so I have notes. First thing I want to say is thank you to the Virginia Museum of History and Culture for hosting this event. I want to thank Vaughn Moss and the Virginia Hip Hop Foundation for putting on this event. I want to thank the panelists tonight. We'll get to introductions in a second. But also, I want to say this is really important. I want to thank all of you for coming. In this age where everyone is just behind their phones and their computers, like showing up is the battle. And you guys showed up, and I really appreciate that. So give yourself a round of applause. Also want to shout out skills. Like I wouldn't know half of what I know about music and about Richmond if it wasn't for you. So thank you. Thank you for your service. Hello.
Hello.
Is dead? You guys want to share that one?
Hi.
We'll share this one.
Hello.
So first thing I want to do is just have each of you introduce yourselves and also tell us about you and your family's heritage and your connection and how you ended up in Virginia. We'll start with you, Simandy.
All right. Well, I'm Thai and Black. My mom in the audience. Hi, Mom. She came to Thailand. As we know, sometimes women get married to an American in the service, and they end up here. So that's how she ended up here. But that wasn't my dad, But she ended up working on as a tailor at Fort Eustis, and actually meeting my father. They lived in the same apartment complex, so they fell in love from there and had me. And my dad's from Norfolk. Norfolk State Spartan original. So, and that's how I'm here.
Intalek, Virginia Beach. So my mother is from Olongapo, Philippines. My father, again, Virginia is just military, so my father's from Philly, joined the military, went to the islands, ran into a beautiful woman named Susan, and chased her down for about a year or two because my mom was not feeling this guy. He was super aggressive, showed off his motorcycle a number of times, thought that would, surprise her. She's like, we got motorcycles everywhere. But eventually they kind of made the match go. My sister was born first, so my sister was actually born in the Philippines. And then a year later, he had to move to Portsmouth, got relocated in Portsmouth, and I was born in Portsmouth Naval, and been in Virginia since, moved around, things like that, but that's my origin story.
Yeah, I'm good. My name is Noah O. So I was born in San Francisco, California. My grandparents came from the Philippines. They're Ilocano, from a province in the north of the Philippines, and they immigrated to the United States around the time of World War II. My father is Sicilian American. He was born in Virginia. His pops was they were like full-blood Sicilian. They were from New York, but his mom was like, my grandma's side, on my dad's side, their last name was James, so they're descended from like the first Scots, Irish, English people who came and settled Virginia. So like my father's Virginia guy, he was kind of a free spirit, so was my mother, so he felt like Virginia was not the place for somebody of his mindset. So like he ended up on the West Coast. That's where he met my mother, and then they moved back to her hometown in San Francisco and created me, or birthed me. Yeah.
How long have you been here?
I grew up here since middle school. So when I was in 7th grade, my parents were separated, and my father needed to start his life over, so he came back to Virginia. And then my mom was having a hard time, like with me and my sister. So one day she just put us on a plane. She said, "You going to Virginia?" And then, yeah, we could get into that culture shock. Let me just say that. So I grew up in MG was saying, like, the Bay Area, especially San Francisco Bay Area, is a very diverse place. It's a place that has had Asian Americans since, probably the time of the railroads and gold rush. So I grew up thinking that the way I was raised, my upbringing, the community that I was in was America. And now, when I moved to Virginia, I saw how unique and how very different it was. I grew up in a part of San Francisco in a city that's on the border of San Francisco called Daly City, which was like, I think to this day is still the highest concentration of Filipino Americans in the United States. So I thought all of America was like this. Like, you grow up, everybody's Filipino, or you grow up in this neighborhood, you get money, and then you move over there, and there's hella Filipinos there. But now, when I was dropped off in Richmond this was like the mid-'90s, like, I saw the reality, and I'm grateful for it, because it definitely prepared me on how to navigate like the rest of America and my path in hip hop. Like, if I wouldn't have had that experience, like, it's one thing when you grow up somewhere and it's like, it's kind of safe because that's what you're used to, but the truth is, being Asian American hip hop is not common. It's not the norm. It's still a barrier or something that the rest of America still has to get comfortable with, but growing up in Virginia definitely prepared me on how to navigate that.
I think, as someone who also grew up in the Bay, there is that sense that you think the rest of the world is like this, because at a very young age, you were confronted with all cultures. And then once you leave the Bay, you realize not everywhere is like that. I want to ask you each a question that I think really taps into the thing that why we're all here, really. How did you first fall in love with hip hop as a culture? Not just in music, but as a culture.
I would say the mixtapes. It was around I guess Justo Awards were still going on. My ex-boyfriend actually put me onto it. And he was just like, oh, get me some mixtapes since you live in Brooklyn. I was going to school at LIU. And so I would like get the Canal Street. There'll be like 6 for $20. On Nevin Street, be 2 for $5. And so I just, initially it was for him, but then I started building my own collection. And then I just started, reading the back of the CDs and stuff like that, fall in love, like COC, Children of the Corn, getting McGruff big time. And then, let me see, like Murder Mommies. That was an era, so I really looked up to them because I was like, wow, it's like these group of women that are so powerful. And if you guys don't know Murder Mommies, it was like First Lady L, Rod Digger, Remy Ma. It was just like women in music and media that were together, and they were just so powerful to me, and that's what got me in love with music.
So I would say hip hop's just always been just a culture for me. Father's a Black American, so Black American in Philly, you up and down the block, you got music going everywhere, every day, every sound, things like that. But it was just something that was always a part of just my lifestyle. My mom's huge LL fan, so she's really into like R&B and things like that, but her rapper was LL. So you couldn't tell her anything about that. That was always playing in the house. But Pops would always get any CD coming out, anything that was generating, he was grabbing. I remember him throwing them on the bed, like his new collection. I'm going through his cassette tapes as I'm young and just playing different things, you know what I'm saying? So it was just always a part like that. To me, hip hop is my culture. That's all I really know is hip hop. So I embrace that fully all the way. But in terms of like it really connecting for me was like that Fugees album. The score that's when it was like, oh, this is something. What is this? Like, and front to back, every word on that album. And then from there, it was just like, I'm absorbed, and it just stuck with me since, so.
And what made you want to make music?
I just always had a knack for poetry, writing. I started as a poet, so in elementary school, writing poems to girls and things like that. Middle school, so don't front, everybody probably did it too, like, you know what I'm saying? Circle yes at the end. But it was just, I was always writing. I'm still writing to this day, just trying to figure out creative ways to put things together. But it wasn't until like, I was living in Bahrain, so my father got stationed in Bahrain. So I'm with all different cultures and colors and things like that, man. We would all meet up at this youth center, and kids from all ages, in every state, every country, and whatever CDs they were listening to, whatever music they was listening to, and we would just sit and write and share bars, verses, battle, things like that, like truly in the culture. But I was just always writing, and then that's what turned it for me, was like, okay, I can do something, because now the reactions for me rapping was like, oh, you're really good. I'm like, all right, well, let me kind of stick with this. And the girls were still checking it out, so it was fire. But that's when it clicked for me. When I lived overseas in Bahrain, I just kind of took it from there and just kept going. And this is 2001, 2002.
Yeah, I know. Like, what made you fall in love with the culture, but also what prompted you to start being a part of it?
Similar to what Intalek was saying, like from the time I was born or my earliest memories, I just remember hip hop just being ubiquitous, like a part of my life. I grew up in this inner city in an urban environment, so when I leave the house, these are the sounds I heard. I had an older cousin that grew up in my household as like my big brother, and I'd sneak in his room. He'd be playing tapes, but it was just like a normal. It just was ever present, right? Like I don't recall a time where like hip hop music or rap music wasn't in my life, but especially again in the Bay Area, like my cousin I'd ask a million questions. He'd show me like people like Too Short or E40, like California, especially the Bay, has always had like rappers. It's been very big as far as like independence. So he'd be listening to tapes from people that were like from neighborhoods that I could get on the bus and go to. So like, I think it was like that is what always captivated me. Like I would listen to these songs, and the things that they were describing were places that I had been to or places that I had experienced. Like, okay, that city's over there, that's this. And then probably right before I moved here, I remember like I started watching more videos, and that's when I'd see like East Coast artists. And I remember seeing people like Nas or rappers from LA, and it was just always it was always interesting to me to learn about other people and other cultures and places I hadn't been yet. And if you listen to most rap music, it's really a lot of times like autobiographical. So these guys are describing their environment, their music sounds like their environment, their style of dress. So like that's what really captivated me. But the first things that made me want to get involved, especially as an Asian American, right? Like I think sometimes when we want to do something, you look for somebody that you could see yourself in. So in this time in hip hop, there was a DJ crew, or there is a DJ crew from the Bay Area called the Invisible Scratch Pickles. These are like a legendary worldwide crew, and they were from the neighborhoods that I was growing up in. DJ Q-Bird, DJ Mixmaster Mike.
Apollo.
Yeah, Apollo. These are guys, and this is not like DJ like nowadays people call somebody DJ because they press a button and play a song. Like, no, these are turntablists. Like, they use a turntable the same way anybody else can play an instrument. And to see, like, these young Filipino guys, and these guys are, like, battling a whole other crew from New York, or they're here in Japan. Like, I would see them in magazines, and then I'd ask, like, people that I knew in the area, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, my older cousin knows them. So, like, I think that was like some of the first memories where I was like, oh, you know, there could be a place for me where I could do something within this culture. But to be a DJ, you know, you got to spend money on equipment. I was a kid, so I didn't have like money to buy turntables and all this other equipment. So the easiest thing was just writing. I could always write, like similar to Intalek. I would channel my feelings or my thoughts, things I was trying to process into poetry. I would take creative writing classes, and that was probably like the beginning of me learning how to express myself.
Shout out Invisible Scratch Pickles.
Yeah, man, legends.
You know, all three of you are mixed, and you know, I imagine the experience of growing up in a mixed household. You are navigating two different cultures simultaneously at all times. How did the Asian side of your backgrounds come into play in what you were doing in hip hop or in your life? You know, in the previous panel, Mundane talked about how he throws a little few like subliminals in his raps, you know, just to acknowledge the culture. But you know, for each of you, just in not only in the art you make or the things that you do, but like in your everyday life, how do you navigate the two sides, the two cultures?
I think I got the cheat code because it's like I got sauce on both sides. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, for real though, I really feel like I got the sauce on both sides. You know, there's a lot of similarities in Black American culture and Asian American culture. And with my mom, like, she's the first one out of her family to come to the U.S., you know what I'm saying? So for her, it was definitely a culture shock. But my father's side of the family definitely just put their arms around her and brought her in. So, you know, just growing up, seeing different, like, you know, there was differences for sure, but it was always love in the household. It wasn't like any different, like, you know. It was only when I went outside that you would see the differences, you know what I'm saying? So for me, a lot of the issues or a lot of trying to figure out where I was at was like maybe sometimes I was too Black for Filipino rooms and then too Filipino for Black rooms. Just being, you know, in the neighborhood I grew up in, it was just more, it was diverse, but I was more Black than anything. So I just kind of gravitated to that, playing sports, basketball, football, things naturally. But I just use it, again, to me, it's just like a superpower. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just fly as fuck. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how, no other way to say it, but it really was just societal, right? Like, art is art, no matter what you're doing, there's no color to it unless you're putting color to canvas or in your words. But I just never looked at it like a crutch. You know what I'm saying?
How did the Filipino side of your family respond to you doing what you do?
So the unique thing with my mother is her parents passed away young. So she moved around a lot, just trying to figure her spaces out in the islands and things like that. So she was kind of like one of those kids that was just left to lose, you know. But she found her space, you know, started to move up. And so on my mother's side, I never really got to meet that family. It's only probably within the last 10 years I've started meeting more aunts and cousins that have made their way here or in California. She's got a huge family in San Diego that we're connecting with now. But again, it's just kind of like an embrace. Like everyone's like, oh, you know what I'm saying, cousin, you know what I'm saying? So that's the thing now. It's like even on both sides, like I'm trying to figure out, you know, it's a broken family in a sense, you know? So I'm not sure where the roots are in my father's side. My mother lost her roots, you know, and then trying to grow roots in America. So it was different, but it was like, okay, this is our team, this is our tribe, let's huddle up and let's make it shake. And, you know, just kind of been moving like that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think hip-hop doesn't get credit for culturally is home for outsiders.
For sure, yeah, and then you have that voice, like hip-hop gives you that voice. It's like that up, like, you know, let's figure it out together. Same for, you know, Asian Americans coming here and then trying to figure out spaces that they can move in and navigate in and, you know, making a way for themselves. Like the music itself gives you that release, you know, like gives you that opportunity to like just put all your feelings out there. And that's kind of what it was. So even in the music, it was like trying to figure out, you know, I would throw little hints. I think I got a bar like, you know, if number one, Theodore the Third. So if number one ain't leave Carolina for Philly, establish a settlement and raise number two in the chilly seasons, number two wouldn't have made it even out of the streets to believe it. He gave number two the reason to see his purpose, travel around the world in his Navy shit, met an island girl and brought her back to make these babies with, transplanted in Virginia soil and gave birth to God's gift. That's some crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? So, thank you. Thank you. Theodore album on Spotify and all that. But yeah, so it's just, you know, just navigating the spaces and giving those subtleties. Because when you see my mother, you total Filipino, like total beautiful Filipino woman. And it's like I'm standing next to her and most people are like, okay, who is this? You know? And it was like that just growing up. Like my sister had to take ESL classes because she spoke fast. But, you know, it's like my father's out to sea and, you know, this Filipino lady's coming in with these two dark-skinned kids and trying to sign them up. How is this working, you know? So it was more societal than anything, but it wasn't in terms of like hip-hop would give me that opportunity to just lay it all out there.
Noah, what about you?
Man, I think like rephrase the question one more time.
Just like how do you navigate the two sides of your backgrounds, right? Like,
yeah.
But personally and in the music.
So my situation was like almost like the reverse of his. So I didn't even realize my pops was white till I moved to Virginia, and then you know as a grown man I like was able to process it. Like I'd see people out like, okay, that's my father. When I'd see a group of people and there's like one white dude amongst everybody else who's not white, I was like, okay, that's who my dad was amongst, you know, what I was raised around. So I had to really see it from the other side. But yeah, all through growing up, I was never really around much white people. And I was never made like me, all my cousins. So like my mom had 5 siblings. Like I have cousins that are Filipino and Mexican, Filipino and black, Filipino and Samoan. 2 of us are like Filipino and Italian. But the common thread we all had was like our Filipino side. So all of us are at my grandma's house growing up. Like it was never like, oh, y'all are half Filipino. Like we all grew up in my grandma's house, eating Filipino food, hearing the language. Then like, you know, once a month they'd have like big picnics where everybody, your auntie, everybody's your auntie and uncle, and they were like all our relatives. So I think like it was nothing. I was never like I never felt different until, like I said, my parents separated. My father moved here first. He probably was here for a year. My mom sent us out here. That was really like my rude awakening, like probably the first couple months living out here. And at that time, especially in Richmond, this is no, people, I don't think people like Nova or Tidewater really realized like what Richmond was like in them times, like especially in the 90s. It's more diverse now, but it was just very black and white, very ignorant, very racist too. Some people, they maybe didn't mean it, they're just ignorant. So like, I think I could feel that being 13, I'm out here and people are probably like, all right, this white dude, and he got these 2 Mexican kids with him. Because people didn't know, like, it was crazy. People like, well, what is Filipino? And I think there was, like, some Cambodians and, like, Vietnamese people here and some, like, Korean people, but people would be like, so what? You're basically, your mom's Chinese? I'm like, nah, bro, she's Filipino, and I'd have to explain. And then when my mom came out here, and my mom is, like, from being from the Bay Area, like, my mom is, born and raised from the inner city. My mom's hood. Like, she's hood, bro. Well, she was hood. My mom passed away. But, she's from the inner city. My mom grew up in Potrero Hill. She actually grew up with SLY and the Family Stone. So, like, my uncles came up playing funk, being in bands. Like, it was, like, one time, my uncles tried to explain to me, especially for, like, my grandparents' generation. My grandfather came to San Francisco at a time when there wasn't a lot of Filipinos. A lot more came in like the 70s when there was some like political turmoil. But he came over, right? He had came over early as a teenager. He was a migrant worker picking fruit in like the Central Valley. This is when people like Cesar Chavez and workers' rights and things like that. So there's a lot of like solidarity with, that first wave of Filipinos and like the Mexicans. Mexican Americans who were there, but when they were growing up, it was very like racist. Even in San Francisco, like they were in some of the neighborhoods they lived in, they were the first like non-white family because my grandfather was doing good. But my uncles would tell me like, they felt like growing up because there wasn't like already examples out there like of what type of American they would be. And oftentimes like that context is in the lane of black or white. So them, growing up how they grew up, like they weren't whitewashed. They were comfortable growing up with African Americans. So like even me, like I grew up, my first experience in school, like me and my sister, we were the only non-black students in a Baptist preschool with a pastor from Baltimore, but we were in San Francisco. So I think like my upbringing is very different, and I didn't realize that till I grew up, but yeah, I never felt like I had to choose. It was just when I moved to Virginia, that's when I became aware. And it was due to other people with putting their projections onto me on how I should behave, how I should speak, how I should conduct myself.
And given that upbringing, how does that influence or seep into your music?
I think it's made me very well-rounded. I think like experiencing some of like that awkwardness or the way people would behave towards me growing up, like you have to have thick skin in hip hop. Like hip hop is not. This is not a. This is like I heard somebody say before. Hip hop is a contact sport. It's different now. Like you could rap and just be in your bedroom and never have rapped in front of people in real life. But like growing up and the type of rap I do, you have to be in front of people. You have to be in environments that are hostile. You have to have a spine. You can't appear weak. So I think like those experiences and then growing up and seeing like hip hop, seeing how it gave African Americans voice to express struggle, pain, and tell their story, it helped me find my voice. Like, okay, I'm hearing people describe, injustices and things they felt, a lot of pain, and it's like, it helped me find my voice, basically. Like, and it helped, I think, growing up and navigating some difficult things, it definitely, like, prepared me to where, like, navigating hip-hop is, like, probably pretty easy compared to, like, real life.
Simandi, we met your mother earlier today. She's in the audience.
Yes.
And your daughter. I'm curious, how much did your cultural sort of, your mixed background play into the spaces you were in as you were coming up?
Well, I'm from Williamsburg, and well, and if you guys know, as you mentioned, Noah, it's very black or white. So me being a mixed child coming up in Williamsburg, I actually lived on both sides of the tracks, you would say. Like I lived on Ironbound Road, and that was predominantly black. And just growing up in that area, I had, like street signs and mailboxes thrown in me and my sister's room, to moving to the white neighborhood off of Route 5, where there's like 10 plantations on to this day. My dad would go on a walk in a neighborhood, and they would do neighborhood watch and say, oh, there's a suspicious black man walking in the neighborhood. And so just, coming from, America's birthplace, I just sensed a lot of racism that still lives on today. I live back in Williamsburg, and I mean, I see a lot of growth now, but, also like you mentioned, it's like, I'm not Thai enough, or I'm not black enough. So I was in this middle ground. So my savior was music, and I didn't have a traditional music upbringing. I grew up in a punk and hardcore scene, coming up and going to Twisters and, going to shows there. So like I said, my ex-boyfriend got me into hip hop. So that's how I fell in love with it, because I felt like the spaces, and I was dating jailbirds and all sorts of stuff. So just hearing stuff like the Beanie Siegel Becoming album, like when I forgot what the name of the song is, but something resonated with me that I was like, man, like I just felt it. And I just felt like, everything just aligned, and everything just, in my professional, because I did more journalism and media, I didn't really feel like race had anything to do with it. But I, just my personal coming up, I felt like it was hard to find my identity and, kind of figure out, like, who am I? So, like, if you guys know my name, Simandi, Cymandye, my dad changed it to put a DY, DYE at the end, but I'm named after a funk band that's from England. So, Simandi. So, music has always resonated in my life. And my grandfather in Thailand, he played music in a Thai traditional band, so they would go from temple to temple playing different music. So I just felt like, like alignment, like everything circulated back to music, and just how life happened, it just ended up where it was.
I want to move on to the Richmond part of it all, but before that, I have a kind of a challenging question for each of you. When this event got posted on Instagram a couple days ago, someone left a comment. I think some of you might have
Culture
seen it.
Vulture?
Culture Vulture.
Yeah, I saw that.
And this is the flip side of the conversation, right? Which is, have you had to deal with that, being labeled that or being called that? I was pretty shocked actually seeing it myself. I kind of understood where it was coming from, but like, how have each of you had to deal with that, if at all, in your trajectory?
Well, I'll answer that.
Take it away.
Let me just say, I'm a Gemini, so I got like a sick part of me that's like, oh, word, okay. First of all, like, to most people when they meet me, like, I probably only had a very small percentage of times, like, people would meet me and they could think I'm Filipino or even Asian. Most of the time, like, they don't know. They think I'm Latino or whatever, just different. I've been called everything. But when it comes to that, I've probably been called every racial thing, like, that somebody would throw at all different colors of people, like, all throughout my life. So it doesn't bother me. But a few years ago, like, I went on Sway in the Morning in 2017. For those who don't know, Sway is like a hip-hop platform. He invites artists on there to freestyle, tell their story, do interviews. And then after that, like people would leave comments like that on my page, like racist stuff, culture vulture, go stick to your culture, this, and that. And then somebody made an Asian joke. So like my friend at the time, there's a rapper named Lil B, the bass god, right? And then my boy was like, oh man, they say all this racist Asian shit. You call yourself Rice God. Like, just own it. So that's what I started to do. And it was like an internal joke with me and my friends. Like, yeah, big rice after death, one rice to live. Like, what you gonna say? It's just like with the Eminem, with the white thing. Like, yeah, bro, he's white. What are you gonna say now? Like, so yeah, it don't bother me, but it's very ignorant. And I want to say, because like growing up in California, like for those who don't know, hip hop came from New York. These like African American youth who were descendants of like Caribbean, like a lot of people like Biggie, Busta Rhymes, all their parents are from like Jamaica, the islands, and Latino kids on the West Coast, especially in the Bay. Like Filipinos and Asians played a major part, from breakdancing to the earliest DJs. So there's never been a time on the West Coast when there wasn't like Asian Americans, especially Filipinos involved. So when I see stuff like that, like it don't bother me, because the people that say stuff like, these aren't hip hop people. Because anybody who comes from hip hop culture knows that hip hop is it's inclusive. It's like you said, it's a place where people can find their voice. People don't trip. It don't matter, black, white, Asian, red, brown, whatever. This is a place, if you are about this culture and you can show and prove and you're really about it, you're not this is not a costume. Like some people ask me that, like, oh, what'd your family think? Like, bro, my family wasn't like come to America and become a nurse and, go to college. My family is like, whatever it takes to survive, whatever it takes for you to not go to jail or hurt somebody. Okay, you love hip hop, do that. Like, so it's not, when I hear stuff like that and see stuff like that, I already know off top, like, these people aren't from hip-hop culture. They're trying to have a political race discourse and debate on the internet. And it's like, bro, whatever, bro. I hope you find peace and happiness. But that's it. That's the only answer I have for that.
Yeah, no, I would say you said it all, in all honesty. My only thing to that is the internet's not a real place. So it don't matter. I saw it too, and I sometimes I catch myself. Like, I'll hit the reply button and I'll try to figure out something to say. But I'm like, there's no point in even getting into all of that. Like,
But I guess, yeah, the internet's not a real place. There's a lot of courageous people behind their phones, right? But in real life, has that ever been a criticism lobbied at you or lobbed at you or anything that you faced in real life?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say so, in all honesty, because again, I think I was just kind of fully immersed into the hip hop culture super early, where it's in my walk, it's in my talk, it's in my mannerisms, things like that. So I was never thrown that. The only thing that I wouldn't contribute or kind of pair it to be the same, but shout out to the homie Rena out here. She booked me for a few events at the Philam Fest. So there's just a lot of times with like traditional Filipinos where if I'm coming up to perform, it's almost like we have to like oversell like me being here, like me having to be here or working my way to get to this point. So, and traditional, because my mom, again, she understands to a certain extent hip hop, but she's just like, as long as you don't get hurt. I saw this on the TV and they were shooting at it, you know what I'm saying? So for her, it's just the sensational side of it. But it's just rooted in tradition on how Filipinos move and things like that. So I wouldn't say it's like more culture vulture, like why is this guy here performing at a Philam Fest? But it's just more of an understanding. Things are like our generation is now becoming that, like everybody's mixed in some sort of capacity. Everybody's mingling in some sort of capacity. And with tradition, there has to be a break in order to grow. And that's kind of, I believe, and you can check me on this too, but I think it's happening in Hampton Roads. There's a certain level of like so much tradition, so much rooted things that Now our generation is like, no, wait, hold on, we don't even move like that. Like we're all in this type of thing together. But in terms of Culture Vulture, it was never a tag on me, but I think it's for Mestizo, I'm just changing what this thing looks like in Hampton Roads.
Yeah, I never received any of that. Even, from, being transparent of like the style of music I came from, I feel like just me being transparent about who I am, that's where I get the acceptance. So like the old interview, I interviewed Cool G Rap, and I was just talking about, punk rock coming out in the Lower East Side and, hip hop. And I just find a lot of similarities between punk and hip hop. And, he spoke on it. He spoke on Billy Idol. So I was like, all right, and it was all love.
I need to hear that. I need to hear G-Rap talking about Billy Idol.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I'll send it to you. But I just really, I'd say the most I've ever seen it was just on the internet and just people trolling and just the Asian jokes. And I really cannot stand it. I don't understand why I see more Asian jokes than anything. Like I just, that's the only thing that bothers me is just like, man, like we're all here together for the love. So.
I'm just going to interject real quick about just a quick perspective. My perspective, real quick, is it might be generational. I'm a little bit older than all of you on stage, but like, that there wasn't a term for it, culture vulture, but there definitely, I think hip hop culture has evolved to the point where it does feel more inclusive. Mm-hmm. I think I came up in an era where I learned very quickly. I have a lot of deference to black culture because it created hip hop, right? Really, hip hop is primarily a black and brown culture, and that deference I'm always cognizant of it, and very, it's kind of really set me on a trajectory to why I do what I do, especially nowadays, like where the government that runs this country is spending a lot of energy in trying to erase black representation, black voices, black history. So I think it is really important still, even as hip hop has evolved to be so inclusive, that we do pay deference to its origins, right? I think, it's different, I think, because you all are mixed. I'm a child of immigrants, so it's a little different experience for me. But, my first hip hop crew in college, it was black, white, Japanese, South Asian. It was like a hodgepodge. I thought that was the ideal. I thought that's how, I was like, oh, this is incredible, right? But as it's evolved, like, so it's funny, when I saw that Culture Vulture comment, I was like, okay, it's internet shit, right? But at the same time, I kind of do understand the sentiment sometimes.
Like, I understand where it's coming from, but I feel like anybody, like, I can only speak in my case, like, I grew up primarily since here and a lot of my life primarily around African Americans, probably more so than I did with Filipino people since I moved here. But like in every community, every urban community, you go to New York, like it's black people in the projects. Like you got projects. To me, hip hop comes from an urban environment. Like, and there's people in America who still don't know. Like, what do you think happens if you go to Hawaii? Who do you think is living and gangbanging in the projects? Polynesians. You get what I mean? So it's like these things, and when I hear stuff like that, or when I see stuff like that, it's to me, it's like I realize this is an uncultured person, because that how you conduct yourself really has more to do with your environment. Like, I came up in a way that, like, it's not a color thing. It's really a socioeconomic thing. I know Asians who are ghetto who've been raised in the ghetto. They talk a certain way, act a certain way. And then I know black kids who have been upper middle class their whole life. So it's like you can't relate this to that. I do know, like you said, hip-hop, yes, first and foremost, this is a black art form. And I'm always respectful of that, first and foremost. So moving through the culture, I've been accepted, but but it's because I show respect and I understand that. Again, this is not like a costume or just a accent I put on.
You get the respect back that you show.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's about authenticity. So it's like to just see somebody and be like, that person's a culture vulture because of their race. Like, no, there's people of all, like, you know, and like she had said, hip hop from the beginning, it did come from, especially in New York, a mixture of this blend of the indie rock scene, indie punk, hardcore scene, and hip hop from the beginning. Def Jam was started by Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons. So it's like, if you know hip hop and you're not just like a casual rap fan, you would know these things. And if you knew these things, you wouldn't say these things. So it's like, you know, they gotta do the knowledge. This is just random internet shit. Yeah. And we gotta stop, like, random internet shit is ruining, I won't even say the world, 'cause I just came back from Europe. No, it's ruining America. Whether this is some kind of psyop that's like just wants everybody to be at each other's throat, this random internet shit might be coming from a troll farm in some other countries. So you gotta really be discerning about the information and the things you interact with and respond to, because it's 99% bullshit and bots. I'm not even gonna go. Yeah, bullshit and bots, 99%. That's my, you know, clock that.
Also, for the elders in the audience, apologize about the language, but we're being genuine. We're being genuine. So I want to get to the Richmond, Virginia of it all, right? So, you know, we all know the story about hip hop's epicenters and how it evolved, right? Skills really was the first person on you representing Richmond, Virginia. And then a few years later, you get Virginia Beach, right? You get Missy, and you get Timbaland, and you get the Neptunes, Teddy Riley before that, really. And, you know, I used to do this show on MTV called My Block. It was a hip-hop documentary series. Thank you.
Thank you.
In our last episode, I was like, let's do Virginia Beach. And I remember when we went to go shoot in Virginia Beach, Timbaland and the Neptunes had their studio at the end of a cul-de-sac right next to each other. And in between them was a dentist. And it reminded me of this. I remember going there and being like, wow, like 3/4 of the hip hop and pop charts are made on this cul-de-sac. And then it made me think of that Chris Rock routine, because I think it had just come out at the time where he's like, you know, you have Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, and then you have this accountant. He's just an accountant. He's not the best accountant. He's just an accountant, right? And it was really like that. There was a dentist who lived between them, and he was just like, oh, what are you here for? Who are my neighbors? Are they famous? And it's like, yeah. But I wonder, you know, I want to know, you know, as people who have made your bones in Richmond, what pride do you feel in this community that maybe others on the outside don't see? And, you know, what are some of the challenges and sort of, you know, benefits of being from a place like Richmond?
Yeah, I'll take that, because I'm Hampton Roads all the way, so Virginia Beach. So I'll get me out the way so you can focus on 804. But correct me if I'm wrong, Skills, but it was kind of all happening at the same time. So even in Richmond and Hampton Roads in like the 90s and things like that, it was just kind of, you know, bubbling. Teddy, of course, was making his thing happen with Future Sounds in Virginia Beach. Then, of course, if you know Pharrell and the Neptunes, then, you know, the Discovery, that whole thing. But
we should specifically shout out Chad.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chad for sure, Filipino all the way, you know what I'm saying? The one with the sounds, like, he wove a lot of that together for sure. But yeah, I mean, I could just speak about, you know, in terms of like the 757, it's just like the difference between Richmond and Hampton Roads is that there's 7 cities, so there's 7 identities, and they all move independently. But in terms of creativity, we all consider it one. So it's like one super region in Hampton Roads. And you always get, like, you can drive 30 minutes in a circle and hit 5 cities if you drive fast enough. And you can see the differences though. Like you could really see the differences in sound and culture and, civically, things like that. So it's just, I think that's what creates the identity. Like when my guy said that, people say that Virginia doesn't have a sound. We are the sound. That's the fire part. Like you put us in any room and do anything. I got a slogan or motto. It's called Virginia Talks Different. And it's just, it doesn't matter what we do, whether you're in Woodbridge or Virginia Beach, Roanoke, we smoking everything, in culture, just my opinion, you know what I'm saying? So, but Hampton Roads is just unique in that it's just so many people. Virginia Beach is the largest city in Virginia. So it's just super touristy, you know what I mean? Richmond was my first ever show. My first book show was in Richmond. It wasn't even in Hampton Roads. So that's my love for Richmond. I went back and forth. I had someone I was dating at the time went to VCU. I was up here every weekend rapping with Noah and radio and Mike, just trying to figure out spaces. But we was just doing our thing, Then I would go home and kind of reiterate and put these points. So Mandy was doing her thing at Norfolk State and on the radio, and we're just figuring out spaces that we can get to, because it was still new. While the pioneers like Skills and them were carving out space for us in this industry, I look at it like we're the new OGs now. So while they've widened that space for us, how do we continue to keep culture moving, culture pushing, And in Hampton Roads, that's kind of where I've landed at. Like I still do music and things like that, but for the greater understanding of what it is that we're doing, we've got to move things forward so they can keep elevating and pushing things up. You know what I mean? But Virginia Beach, the sauce is there. You got Clips, Timbaland, Neptunes, me. You know what I mean? Like it's just a lot. So, but no, it's just dope, man. And then even in the area, you can go to Norfolk and find a whole batch of artists that are smoking it. You can go to Newport News and find the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
Shout out Quan.
Yeah, for sure. LES is always in Newport News, and you know what I'm saying? Bink is still in Norfolk. You know what I mean? Like Knots is always hanging out in Norfolk. Like our pioneers are still home. So we gotta embrace that. You know what I mean? And we're just pushing it forward.
So Mandy, like what finding your space in Virginia, like what was that like from an industry perspective?
Well, I started at Norfolk State. I auditioned for Hot 91 WNSB, and from there, just interviewing. I had you guys mind if I cuss? I had a show. I had a show called Mindfuck Radio, music that get in your head and makes you think, and that's where I interviewed Cool G Rap and different people. But interviewing PD Crack, his manager is like, yo, you ever thought about getting into blogging? And I was like, blogging? Like, I can't write. I was like, I don't want to write. He's like, no, just try it. And I was like, all right. So I did it, and I took that as I ended up writing for hip hop since 1987 because he was one of the secret investors in that. And he was just like, so I pretty much saw all my friends, including Intalek, and anybody I saw that was doing something on a grand level, I was like, I'm promoting this because I feel like what hip hop since 1987 was doing with their Philly artists, I wanted to just use the platform and apply it to the Virginia artists. And then that, opened the door with Respect Magazine and, doing different things, Patchwork Studios. I'm more of a creative, so I'm more on the back end, like graphic design, things like that. So there is a place, and you can get a career in music, and, you guys never leave out the engineers. There's plenty of space for everybody. And just like, I just feel like, what was the question again?
I just, because the industry, you to some extent had to sort of create your own industry.
Yeah,
here, right?
I had to create my own, like with Mindfuck, and you mentioned Timbaland studio. One of his A&Rs, Larry Live, he was in a group called Surrounded by Idiots. I don't know if you guys are you guys familiar with Surrounded by Idiots? Okay, so that was a group with Timbaland, Pharrell, Magoo, and Larry Live. Google it, Surrounded by Idiots, and you'll find their old tracks like what was it?
Big white spaceship.
Skull caps and striped shirts, and so that will give you a little history on Virginia. But like I was his creative, helping him with creative direction and stuff like that. So I just felt like I'm thankful for Norfolk State forever and their radio station, because that opened a door for me to be able to maneuver in the entertainment industry. And then so I always advise everybody, if there's internship opportunities, look into it, but be very intentional. Like just don't do anybody. Like make sure you're doing some legit stuff. So I mean, yeah, that's all.
My bad. What was the question?
So basically, representing for Virginia in general, like, what are you proud of from being from here, and how is that reflected in the music? But also, what have been the challenges of like finding your footing in a space that isn't recognized necessarily?
So, of course, things I'm proud of. Like, I was fortunate. The time, really right at the time that I came here, Skills had just came out. That was a major album. Then right after that, or right around the same time, was D'Angelo. D'Angelo pretty much, helped neo soul become a thing. So I'm seeing two artists from this relatively, mid-sized, not known city come out. So it definitely like immediately gave me hope that like, okay, I can do what I want to do. I can go down the same lane, even though Richmond isn't that big. But and then later on, of course, around the time that you did the My Block show, we had other artists from the same region: Chris Brown, Trey Songz, as well as numerous producers who went on to make a name for themselves. But the challenges, I think the biggest thing is this isn't like a media hub. So we don't have the media, we don't have the outlets to get us heard, right? So I do believe we have, and is evident, for somewhere that isn't along the coast or New York, Atlanta, or LA, like we've produced probably like a disproportionate amount of like legendary people, but we don't have, Shade 45 here. We're not Atlanta. We need like media. That's what gets us heard. So like what you did, that's tremendous to come here. So like one thing I've done, I throw a festival every year. Like I've been fortunate. I've been on Sway numerous times. I was interviewed on Hot 97 in New York with DJ Enough before I was like even interviewed in Richmond. So I've been able to go to Atlanta, other places, and get my story known, make more people aware of my music. But to bring it full circle, what I started doing is, as I built relationships with these outlets, like I convinced them to come here. Like, okay, no, instead of doing an interview there, or I come up there when I drop an album and just do another freestyle, like, what do y'all need for me to get y'all to come film a Virginia Cypher? So I've done it with a platform called High Off Life TV. I've done it with Chinatown Sound. I've done it with Top Shelf Premium. These are like known hip hop outlets in the underground and it's a big deal to me because like if you look at their pages, like they do stuff in New York. And then if you look on their page, like the one other place they've done stuff is Richmond, Virginia. Like that's an anomaly. They could go to Houston, Texas, but I think doing that type of work is important because that's the thing we really lack is like knowledge and infrastructure. Like that's the one thing that would probably take things over the top is if we just have more infrastructure here. Because otherwise it creates like almost like a brain drain. It's like a creative drain where like we'll continue to produce dope people, dope artists, but if they don't got any way to get heard, they gotta leave. And I understand it, Like you gotta go where the work is. So that's what we need.
No, I second that. I mean, yeah, to the infrastructure part, I think that's the thing that is missing is our media. Like we just don't have large enough media. So, as artists, we want to be embraced. So we go to the larger outlets that are in DC or New York or, LA, things like that. And that, again, that's kind of the work that I'm trying to figure it out in Hampton Roads is even with hip hop, it's always had a black eye, like in Hampton Roads, you know what I'm saying? And to me, it kind of shifted when Greek Fest happened in '89, where it was just a whole, Virginia Beach used to be the hub and the hangout for HBCUs and things like that. And, the city didn't understand it. They didn't know how to embrace that. So it was, and even the businesses down there too, like there was just a misunderstanding, and there still is a misunderstanding. So I want to live in that space where I'm meeting council members, civic leaders, any business owners, and letting them know what this hip hop thing is. To me, they just need a soft landing into knowing how to get or understand what this hip hop thing is. Because again, they're online leaving comments like Culture Vulture or saying certain things, and there's just a misunderstanding to what it is. I feel like Richmond's art scene is a lot more, because it's just one, so, and this, I could be wrong, but, there seems to be a commingling of art with everyone. It's still a separation in Hampton Roads, and that's kind of the space I want to figure out is, all right, this is what we do. This is how we generate revenue. This is how we can bring culture, to the oceanfront, because it only looks a certain way. There's only a few hip-hop spaces you can go to in Hampton Roads. We got to still perform in dark clubs, on the low, or, unless you're on the larger stages like Elevation, Norva, things like that. But if it's not on there, then it's like, all right, you're performing at a bar, in front of other rappers. What's that doing? That's not doing anything. You're getting your chops up, but it doesn't really push anything. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a lot of rooted history in Virginia that should be uprooted so there could be an understanding of what our culture truly looks like.
That's pretty much our time. I want to thank you all for being on this and engaging in the conversation. One thing I do want to say, in preparing for this night, the thing I respect about each of you is how much you do. It's not just one thing. Some of that I imagine is out of necessity, but it is also, I think, inspiring to see just how it's all connected. It's not just the music; it's having to support yourself and support others. And it's not. It feels like you guys are each representing more than yourselves. So, respect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you for everybody who came out tonight. Appreciate it.
Let's hear it one more time for our panelists. I want to thank Mundane, thank MG, Samandi, Intalek, Noah O. And, they talked a little bit about Joseph working at MTV and doing My Block. Like, that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, Joseph is not from Virginia, but he is not a stranger. Like, bringing MTV to document what was happening in Virginia was a big deal. And, we talked about him and Questlove doing the SLY documentary. They actually interviewed D'Angelo in his last interview before he's passed away. And he was here at D'Angelo's funeral. So Joseph is our cousin. So we're happy to have him. Very important for him to be here. So thank you, Joseph, for taking the time to come out. So again, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to VMHC for hosting us. Thank you to Dominion. Thank you to the Asian American Society of Central Virginia. Thank you to the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce. Shout out to Mama Vicky's food truck. Please make sure to go check out the items from Chase Gozum. I really appreciate Chase bringing that stuff down here. Like, he's got some really cool, really dope, like iconic pieces from the history of Virginia hip hop out there. So check that out. Joseph, can we get the graphic up here for donations, Joseph? Not Joseph Patel, but Joseph at VMHC. Can we get the donation graphic up? Yes. So yes, we are a Virginia Hip Hop Foundation is a nonprofit organization. So if you are inclined to give, please support to help us do more cool things for the culture like this and bring dope conversations with dope people like our panelists together to celebrate the culture. All of the proceeds go to our mission. And again, like I said, the partnership with the VMAC is about us building towards building an exhibit to celebrate this culture that Virginia has done to impact and influence hip hop. So any support you can give is greatly appreciated. Quick housekeeping note, please do not come on the stage as we take some pictures. Mundane and MG, please come up and take pictures with us. Any of our Virginia Hip Hop Foundation board members that are in the audience, please come to the stage. Everyone else, feel free to go out into the lobby area here to check out the artifacts from Chase, take some photos in the backdrop. Our panelists will come out eventually, and you can catch them if you can. But other than that, thank you again so much for coming up. Happy AAPI Heritage Month. Again, be safe and good night.